Welcome back to Raid Guides in a Trench Coat featuring Warlord's Ruin, the Elder Scrolls 604 divided by 24 days. In a world where you immerse yourself in the space magic fantasy of veritable genocide through flaming hammers and wrapping your fists in smallpox blankets, take a step back in history to a time when some of the best instruments of war were flames, hammers, and the plague. Evolution really is a myth, huh? It reminds me of one of my favorite games to play with non-K-pop listeners, where I show them a music video from a group called La Seraphim, tell them that there is a 10-year difference between the oldest and the youngest member, and watch them shuffle uncomfortably for the full 3-minute video. I'll give you a few seconds to pause and ruminate. It's even funnier when they identify the 16-year-old one as being the 26-year-old one. Corporate wants you to find the difference between these groups of pictures, and guess what? They're all the same photo. So Warlord's Ruin is a great dungeon because it's Scorn, and as a result finally lets us have popcorn in a dungeon, which it takes to the extreme and rewards us with a whole movie theater's worth anytime we open a chest. There are a few chests that actually give drops, but honestly, Screebs don't clog up my inventory like all the exotic pinnacle drops that take 30 years to dismantle. The dungeon starts with a short jumping puzzle, and we're introduced to the first of the 3 Pinata Screebs. Screebs that drop a bunch of dark ether casks as you speed past all the beautiful winter scenery and focus exclusively on beating all of the candy out of them that you can. By the time you finish pulverizing it, you're practically already at the first encounter, but if you backtrack a little bit, you'll find this cute little cage that you can walk into and then force your ghost to do a little work for a change. Relace your snowshoes and then prepare yourself for the first encounter. The mechanics of this dungeon are based around all the kinky wishes that these dark ether corrupted Elixni have managed to conjure up after being exposed to paracausal wish dragons for untold centuries. Honestly, it's no wonder that this Ahamkara is dead, given that we can escape every one of the wishes meant to trap, freeze, or kill us to death. But hey, not even a nat 20 get through plot armor, I suppose. As for what these kinky wishes might be, we start in the first encounter with a wish for some weird medieval torture bondage via these rising cages, which honestly isn't so bad compared to the ice player, the literal fisting that we'll be receiving later. When you start the encounter, you'll kill some Scorn, and then the boss will summon one of these Scorn totems fueled by a Taken Blight, rather than any of the Blight subclasses we've seen them use before. Quite frankly, I still have a lot of questions about how they're utilizing powers of the Light as Scorn, but I'm sure that's hidden away in one of the Bite videos I haven't gotten around to. Anyways, as soon as that totem goes out, it'll be about 3/2 of a second before all of your fireteam members are teleported up into these cages and surrounded by the prying eyes of your ancestors trying not to watch whatever weird debaucherous shit you're about to get into. Shoot the eyes to blind them and open the cage before you reach the top and get impaled. It's worth noting also that you're not limited to shooting your own eyes and often have a better lineup for your allies anyway. Help a brother out. Once you've gotten yourself down, you can then stand inside the totem's radius for some number of seconds to make it go from Blightly Taken to Constellation Blue, which are, coincidentally, 2 of my pet titans' favorite grand colors. With the totems activated, the boss's shield will then drop for about 5 seconds per totem that you were able to activate, which is a whopping maximum of 2 totems for this encounter. Unleash your ammo, and then when the shield goes up, get ready to do it all again. Honestly, it's a short and easy loop, and then when you're done, instead of getting your loot, you'll see a spicy meatball and go directly to jail. Turns out the jalapeno-colored meatballs are an affront to the IKEA that's situated on one of the neighboring mountains and is tantamount to a war crime. So now you're going to waste away in jail, and if you're anything like my Day 1 group, then it really will be like wasting away as you stare at the legendary engram sitting in a pile of glimmer just out of reach. But that's why you've come to a video labeled as a raid guide, to learn from the past mistakes and trauma of other players. So in an uncharacteristic break of immersion, these jail cells are all equipped with smoke detectors, and anyone who has ever tried to cook with oil in a 7-square-foot apartment can tell you how easy it is to set said smoke detectors off. Honestly, with all the open flame torches that are around, this is a pretty poor place to install so many smoke detectors. If you shoot a smoke detector, it will start to spin. If you shoot it again, it will stop, and if you shoot it a 3rd time, it'll start to rotate, but the other way. The up to 3 of you Guardians are also not alone in this prison. In jail with the few of you will be 2 more inmates, Wrightsley and Leftington, and they will be the key to solving this puzzle. Next to Wrightsley's right hand will be a number of scratch marks, and the same with Leftington's left hand. These correlate to the smoke detectors in that X number of them will need to be rotating clockwise, and then Z number of them will need to be rotating counterclockwise based on the right and left numbers. Each inmate should be able to see at least 2 of the smoke detectors, so coordinate with one another to make the numbers match and then shoot this lever here, and everyone will be set free to claim their loot. From here, you'll enter a multi-floor maze of castle hallways, feat the second pinata scream, and a whole bunch more of those locked Ahamkara bone doors. Clear some ads, don't get stabbed, don't fall off the snowdrifts, climb into the sewer, and then climb up one last staircase to enter into the second encounter. The locus of wailing grief is exactly what Honkai Star Rail players feel after Kafka continues not to come home. Or even sometimes when they do, but that player realizes they had to pay upwards of $100 to get a seventh of a single character. And people thought $10 for UB Funkies was bad. Anyhow, this big taken ogre went to the J.J. Abrams School of Opening Shots and Lens Flares, so my first recommendation is to put on a pair of sunglasses. The Locus of Wailing Grief will spawn 6 of these Acolyte eyeballs and 2 particularly beefy taken Minotaurs. The Minotaurs matter about as much as the common cold when you don't have health insurance, in the sense that 99 out of 100 times nothing bad happens, but the one time you bank on it being alright, suddenly you get crippled by the plague. 2020 called and it wants its joke back. Killing the eyes, on the other hand, is integral to the encounter's progression. Kill all but one of the eyes in self-preservation, and then kill the last whenever you're ready to continue. For the second kinky wish, the Scorn will wish for you to engage in some form of ice play with them via the freeze mechanic from the Deepstone Crypt. If you get 10 stacks, you'll freeze up and die, which has gotten an animation glow up since the last time it was used. Torches around the outer edge of the arena grant you shelter from the storm, while 2 big yellow bar Scorn come into the arena. The Blight Totems are back in play, but you have to be a bit smarter about it this time to get the fastest time. Sure, you could just shred the yellow bars as they come up, but that would lead to doing more phases, and more phases leaves more room for error, and more error means more wipes. You see, each of these Scorn captains will drop 1 Blight Totem when they die, but they also end up dropping another one randomly after some time, which totals up to 4 total Blight Totems you can get per ice phase. Coincidentally, 4 is the number you need to progress. The only problem is that the captains will hold on to their first Blight Totems like it's a bar of soap in prison and refuse to drop it any faster, even if they're within an inch of their life. So don't get trigger happy, or else you'll be doing an extra phase. Stand in the totems to activate them, don't freeze to death, and then you'll get fireballs for each totem you successfully cleansed. These fireballs will need to be carried to activate the 4 braziers in a 2x2 formation around the central boss, which act as a temporary damage spot against a boss who fires lasers, and no. Callus is dead. It doesn't mean anything. Leviathan isn't coming back. Bungie, please prove me wrong. So carry the fireballs out to the braziers, and if you didn't spawn all 4 balls in the first try, because why would you, make sure to deposit before killing the eyes again, and then just do the same thing as before, sans Minotaurs, which will only respawn after a damage phase. Speaking of a damage phase, damage will start as soon as you deposit your 4th flame charge, and the freezing mechanic will come back, which has Red up in arms because it's wiped more solo flawlesses via glitch than it has killed casual players caught outside of the flames. Standing close to a brazier is the only way to deal damage, but you have to burst fast as each brazier is only up for about a vine or 2 before it's snuffed out and you have to rotate to a new brazier. Cycle around, don't get stomped, and then back off and get ready for another fire phase, or kill him. Going between the second and third encounter takes the mental bashing your head against a wall from the first interlude and turns it into a more physical affair. Blow yourself up with a room full of screep chests, and then get absolutely stoned after misusing this green stuff that the Vanguard would have outlawed years ago had the Traveler not given space bugs the one thing that made us special. Use a whole cat's worth of lives getting through the Taken Blight rotator that reminds me of my Deepstone Sherpa days, where the southern white-sounding middle-aged men would tell me that Spacewalk felt like their childhood days of playing Mario. If I had a nickel for every time it happened, I would have 2 nickels, but it's weird that it happened twice and with that particular accent to boot. Anyways, scale the mini mountain range to a small army's worth of ads, kiss Toland on the cheek as you pass, you'll be back in 3 runs to check on him, and then climb the tower only to jump off of it into the final boss arena. Taken Blight meatballs have certainly gotten moldier and more gnarled since the last time we had to fight them, and honestly it's good to know that shelf life is something that Bungie is considering when designing their enemies. You've now encroached on this Ahamkara's final resting spot, and he's going to defend it till his dying breath. Which I guess was a while ago if the point is that he's already dead, but that's neither here nor there. The mechanics phases here start out almost identically to that of the previous encounter. Putz around killing ads until you decide to poke out all of the eyes, where you'll be launched into the Blight Totem phase. The only real difference here is that these other Taken Blight balls will corrupt random parts of the arena until you shoot them, but trying to clear them is like playing whack-a-mole, so half of the time it's better to just concede India rather than lose all of Australia. For the third and final wish, the Scorn are after a really good fisting session, and if they have their way, then there'll be an element of mutual gratification as you fist back and forth until one of you keels over and dies. The same 2 yellow bar Scorn captains will drop up to 4 blight totems again, but this time you get a spicy STD that you'll need to pawn off on someone like you're in the movie It Follows. Punch any of the white guys in the face and give them a black eye and a black, well, everything else. Then avoid them because they'll be trying to do the same to you like a childhood game of tag where you'll keep going back and forth until one of you gets tired. At that point you'll either start a damage phase, or you'll die. The length of the damage phase will be determined by how many blight totems you were able to activate, but there are absolutely no negative consequences to missing damage phases besides the aforementioned more phases equals more wipe sentiment. The scary flashing yellow partition of the boss's health bar is just telling you how long until he switches you up to the next platform. It's worth noting that you can absolutely overcap on that segmented health bar provided you activate enough totems and have enough ammo. In total there are 3 platforms each with their own quirks like being bad, and taking too long to get to. After you complete all those patterns, you'll be treated to a real damage phase. Said real damage phase will be an eerily similar, short truncated damage windows on 3 different floating islands, except without all the blight balls, totems, and fisting, alongside a considerable damage modifier. You'll rinse and repeat this cycle as many times as it takes for you to get his health bar to the final stand. In final stand, you'll get teleported to the top of the tower you entered from, and Hefend will increase his firepower 4-fold. Empty your reserves, hide behind pillars, or use the age-old Joseph Joestar strat and run as far away as you can before sniping him from the safety of a spot that probably should have gotten adjoining allies' wall. Proton torpedo his mouth while poking out his eyes, and then, congrats! You completed the Warlord's ruin. A quick trip over to Wiktionary tells us that Hefend is actually just an Icelandic word for vengeance. So, vengeance is vengeance. We just killed Moon, guys. Go watch a real guide.